Hi, 6th graders. We're on lesson 4.8, which is being able to find the least common multiple of two numbers. So make sure you label your page appropriately. So the lesson before we talked about finding the greatest common factor, and now we're talking about finding the least common multiple. So we need to make sure that we understand the difference between factors and multiples. So the factors of 12, which we've talked about, are 1. Remember, factors are numbers multiplied together to get that number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Because we know that 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12. So factors of 12 are equal to that number or less than. Multiples of 12, you start at that number, so we're going to start at 12, and we're going to count by 12s. So 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and so on. Okay, and these go on and on and on and on forever. So multiples are the same or equal to or greater than. So you might want to write that in your notes. You for sure want to write the difference between factors of multiples and then write your examples of factors of 12 and multiples of 12. So if we want to find the least common multiple, which is the smallest number that has a multiple of 2 or more numbers, there's a couple different ways that we can find it. So LCM is the abbreviation for least common multiple, just like GCF is the abbreviation for greatest common factor. Our first method is the list method. So we have to list out the multiples of each of the numbers. So if we want to find the least common multiple of 3, 5, and 6, we are going to just list the multiples. So we can see that the multiples of 3, you count by 3s. Multiples of 5, you count by 5. Multiples of 6, you count by 6. And then I can see that 30 is in each of the lists. If I keep going, there will be another number that is in each of the lists, and more, but the least common multiple is the lowest number that is in each of the lists. So find the smallest number, and then we know that the least common multiple of all three of those numbers is 30. So I want you to try finding the least common multiple of 6 and 8. So pause me and do that. So the multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and I'm just going to stop here for now and see what my next, where my next list takes me. So then the multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, and I already found a number. I can see that 24 is in both of the lists, so that means I can stop. I could keep going, but I can stop because I've already found that 24 is in both. So that means the least common multiple of 6 and 8 is 24. The next method is by using prime factorization, which we're getting really good at. So what you need to do is take the prime factorization of each of the numbers. So if we're finding the least common multiple of 24 and 36, we're going to take the prime factorization of 24, which I'm going to do 2 and 12. 2 is prime, so I'm going to circle it. And then I'm going to take 2 and 6, because remember these numbers multiplied together have to equal the number on top of the triangle. So 2 times 12 is 24. 2 times 6 is 12. And then we have 2 and 3. They're both prime. So then we stop there. And now I know that I write this out 2 to the third. And this time we want to write it out with the powers. Instead of 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, we want to write it with the powers. And then 36 I know is 6 times 6. And then 2 and 3 for each of the 6's. And those are all prime. So we're going to circle these. Oops, that should be circled. So I have 2 squared times 3 squared. So we first find the prime factorization. Now we multiply the greatest power of each number. So what does that mean? We have 2 cubed times 3 and 2 squared times 3 squared. So each of our numbers have a prime factor of 2. This one is 2 cubed and this one is 2 squared. The greatest power, we would take this 2 cubed, and then they each have a 3. But this one is higher because it's a 3 squared. So we're taking this one because it's higher, and we're taking this one because it's higher, the 3 squared. So the least common multiple of 24 and 36 is whatever 2 cubed times 3 squared is. So 2 cubed, remember, is the same as 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, and then I know 3 times 3 is 9, so 8 times 9 is 72. If you were to do a list method and list them all out, you would still get the same least common multiple of being 72. Okay, I know that method is a little bit more confusing, so we're going to do one more example together. So we're going to use prime factorization to find the least common multiple of 5 and 15. 5 is already prime, so the prime factorization of 5 is just 5. 15 is 3 and 5. And then both of these are prime, so then we leave it at that. So multiply the greatest power of each number. So they each have a 5, and they're each the first power. So we take 5. This one doesn't even have a 3, but because a 3 is part of this number's prime factorization, we're going to take the 3. So 5 times 3 is 15. So the least common multiple of 5 and 15 is going to be 15. And by the way, least common multiple and greatest common factor, if it's one of the numbers, that is totally fine. That just means, because if we list this out, 5, 10, 15, and then we start listing it out, remember you always start with the number that you have. Well, I don't have to even go any further because they both have a 15. Okay, I want you to try to pause me and just try this using prime factorization and using the list method and see and make sure that you get the same answer. So the prime factorization of 10 is 2 and 5. Prime factorization of 12, I'm going to do 3 and 4, and then I know that 4 is 2 and 2. So I'm going to circle these because they're prime, and circle these because they're prime. So this is 2 times 5. This is 2 squared times 3. So I know in my least common multiple, my least common multiple is going to have at least a 2 and a 3 and a 5. Now we just have to figure out how many because we pull each one out. So the greatest power of between both of my 2's is 2 squared. I only have one 3, so that's the 3 that comes. And I only have one 5, and neither of them have exponents, so that is the one that it gets pulled out. 2 squared is 4, and then I know that 5 times 3 is 15, so 15 times 4 equals 60, so our least common multiple of 10 and 12 is 60, and I know that 60 is a multiple of 10, and I know that 60 is a multiple of 12. And if you did the list method, you should have also gotten 60. And then one last thing that I want us to do is to find the greatest common factor of 25 and 30 and find the least common multiple of 25 and 30. So pause me and see if you can remember how to do each of these. So 25, the factors are 1, 5, and 30. For 30, we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. And this should not be 30. This should have been 25. So our greatest common factor that we can see, the only number that we have in common is 5. So GCF is 5. Least common multiple. So we have 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, and 150. And as I'm doing these numbers, I'm thinking in my head, are any of these multiples of 30? And I know already that 150 is going to be a multiple of 30, but I just want to make sure that there's none before that I run into. So we have 30, 60, 90, 120, 150. So our least common multiple of 25 and 30 is 150. So make sure you remember and know the difference between GCF and LCM. All right, make sure you log into NICU and take your 4-8 NICU quiz. Have a good night.